The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from a dozen species gathered around the massive crystalline table. At its center sat Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthak Empire, his forearms crossed in obvious displeasure. His scaled hide rippled with the bioluminescent patterns that indicated extreme irritation among his kind. "The humans refuse to surrender," Zektar announced, his voice carrying the guttural undertones that made most species uncomfortable. 3 solar cycles we have demanded they abandon their expansion into the Outer Rim territories. 3 solar cycles they have ignored our ultimatum. The assembled delegates shifted uneasily. The humans were relatively new to galactic politics, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 50 standard years ago. Most species took centuries to develop such technology, and the humans' rapid advancement had caught everyone off guard. Representative Quiln of the Ethereal Collective floated slightly above her designated space, her gossamer form shimmering with worry. "Perhaps we should reconsider this course of action. The humans have proven unpredictable in their responses to threats." Zektar's massive head turned toward her, all 6 of his eyes focusing with predatory intensity. "Unpredictable? They are primitives who got lucky with their technology. They have barely mastered interstellar travel, and yet they dare to claim systems that rightfully belong to established civilizations." Admiral Krex of the Hegemony Warfleet leaned forward, his insectoid features clicking with anticipation. "The Vorthak are correct. These humans need to learn their place in the galactic hierarchy. They may have surprised us with their technological development, but they lack the evolutionary advantages that make a species truly formidable." The debate had been raging for hours, but Zektar had already made his decision. The Vorthak Empire had not become the dominant military force in 3 galactic sectors by showing weakness to upstart species. If diplomacy would not work, then they would resort to their most time-tested method of establishing dominance. "We will invoke the ancient tradition of single combat," Zektar declared, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Let the humans send their greatest warrior to face our apex creature. When their champion falls, they will understand the futility of opposing us." Several delegates gasped at the announcement. The tradition of single combat was rarely invoked, reserved for settling disputes between species when all other diplomatic options had failed. It was considered both an honor and a death sentence to be chosen as a species representative. Representative Yelan of the Pacifist Union raised her crystalline hand in objection. "Ambassador Zektar, surely this is an extreme response. The humans have shown no hostile intent toward any established colonies. They are simply expanding into unclaimed space." Zektar's laugh was a sound like grinding stone. "Unclaimed space that we intended to claim. The humans move too quickly, establish colonies before proper surveys can be completed. They disrupt the natural order of expansion that has maintained peace for millennia." The truth was more complex than Zektar was willing to admit. The Vorthak Empire had indeed planned to expand into the Outer Rim, but their bureaucratic processes moved slowly. By the time they had completed their environmental assessments and territorial surveys, human colony ships were already establishing settlements on dozens of worlds. What truly frustrated the Vorthak was not just the territorial dispute, but the manner in which humans approached colonization. Other species took decades to properly terraform and establish infrastructure on new worlds. Humans seemed to thrive in conditions that would challenge most established species, adapting their technology and even their biology to hostile environments with remarkable speed. Admiral Krex nodded approvingly at Zektar's proposal. "The Nethrix would be the obvious choice for your champion. No species in recorded galactic history has ever survived single combat with a Nethrix." The mention of the Nethrix sent a wave of unease through the chamber. Even species that had never encountered one knew the legends. Standing 3 meters tall and massing nearly half a ton, the Nethrix were the apex predators of the Vorthak homeworld. Their natural armor could deflect energy weapons. Their claws could slice through reinforced hull plating, and their hunting instincts were honed by millions of years of evolution. More terrifying than their physical capabilities was their intelligence. Unlike mindless beasts, the Nethrix were capable of tactical thinking, pattern recognition, and adaptation during combat. They could learn their opponent's fighting style and adjust their own tactics accordingly. In the 3 instances where single combat had been invoked in the past millennium, the Nethrix champion had emerged victorious within minutes. Quiln's form flickered with distress, Perhaps we should at least warn the humans about what they face. It seems unsporting to allow them to send a warrior without understanding the nature of their opponent. Zektar's eyes narrowed. The challenge clearly states that each species may send their apex creature or champion. If the humans choose to send an ordinary soldier instead of their greatest warrior, that is their failing, not ours. The vote was called and passed with a narrow majority. 3 days later, the formal challenge was transmitted to Earth and the human colonies throughout their territory. The message was simple. Send your greatest champion to face the Vorthak apex creature in single combat, or withdraw from all disputed territories in the Outer Rim. The response came within hours, transmitted on all galactic communication frequencies, so that every species could witness the human reply. The message was delivered by Admiral Sarah Chen, the highest-ranking human military officer in the Outer Rim fleet. "We accept your challenge," Admiral Chen stated calmly, her image broadcast to every capital world in known space. "Our champion will meet yours at the designated coordinates in 7 standard days. However, we find it amusing that you consider yourselves worthy of facing humanity's apex creature." The subtle confidence in her voice was what unnerved the watching delegates more than any boastful threat could have. Admiral Chen spoke with the casual certainty of someone who knew something the rest of the galaxy did not. Zektar dismissed the human response as primitive bravado. Whatever creature or warrior the humans sent would face the same fate as every other challenger. The Nethrix had never been defeated, and no species in the galaxy had produced anything capable of matching its lethal combination of size, strength, speed, and intelligence. As news of the upcoming combat spread throughout galactic civilization, betting pools opened on dozens of worlds. The odds heavily favored the Vorthak, with most bookmakers offering 1,000-to-1 odds against a human victory. Some species placed ceremonial bets on the humans out of sympathy, but no one seriously expected them to survive the encounter. The stage was set for what most observers believed would be a brief but decisive demonstration of why humans should know their place in the galactic order. The neutral space station designated Combat Platform 7 had been hastily constructed for the single combat challenge. Built at the midpoint between human and Vorthak territory, the station featured a massive arena with transparent aluminum walls that could withstand the impact of starship weapons. Observation decks surrounded the combat area, already filling with representatives from dozens of species who had come to witness what many expected to be a historic slaughter. Ambassador Zektar stood in the Vorthak preparation chamber, observing his species' champion through reinforced viewing ports. The Nethrix, designated as Bone Render, paced within its containment area, its massive form moving with predatory grace despite weighing nearly 500 kilograms. Its natural armor plates gleamed under the artificial lighting, each one capable of deflecting energy, blasts that could vaporize lesser creatures. Bone Render had earned its name during the Outer Spiral conflicts 2 decades earlier, when the hegemony had foolishly challenged Vorthak territorial claims. Bone Render had been unleashed upon their finest warriors. The recordings of those battles were still used to train Vorthak military academies, though they were considered too brutal for most species to view. The creature's 6 limbs each ended in claws longer than most species' entire hands. Its elongated skull housed a brain capable of tactical analysis that surpassed many sentient species, while its nervous system could process combat information faster than most computer targeting systems. Evolution had created the perfect killer, and Vorthak's selective breeding had refined it into something approaching biological perfection. "The humans still have not revealed their champion," reported Subcommander Yakith, consulting his datapad. "Their transport vessel arrived 6 hours ago, but they have maintained communication silence since docking." Zektar's expression showed satisfaction rather than concern. "They are attempting psychological warfare through mystery. It matters little. No creature they possess can match a Nethrix in single combat." Across the station, in the human preparation area, a very different scene was unfolding. Commander Marcus Rodriguez sat calmly in a simple chair, reading a book of ancient Earth poetry while sipping coffee from a thermal mug. His casual demeanor stood in stark contrast to the tension filling the rest of the station. Rodriguez was not an imposing figure by human standards, standing barely 1.8 meters tall with the lean build of someone who relied more on endurance than raw strength. His graying hair and weathered face spoke of decades of military service, but nothing about him suggested the kind of physical prowess needed to face a legendary alien apex predator. "Sir, are you certain about this plan?" asked Lieutenant Sarah Park, his aide-de-camp. "The briefings on the Nethrix make it clear that conventional weapons will be ineffective. Even our best combat armor won't protect against those claws." Rodriguez looked up from his book with a slight smile. "Lieutenant, I'm not planning to fight the Nethrix. That would be suicide. And despite what the galaxy thinks about human recklessness, we're not actually stupid." The confusion on Park's face deepened. "Then what exactly is our strategy, sir?" "The combat rules are clear. No weapons, no artificial enhancements, no external assistance. It's supposed to be creature against creature, strength against strength." "That's exactly what it will be," Rodriguez replied, returning to his poetry. The Vorthak made one crucial error in their challenge. They assumed that humans would send our apex creature to face theirs. Meanwhile, in the cargo bay of the human transport vessel, a very different kind of preparation was taking place. Dr. Elena Vasquez checked the environmental readings one final time before nodding to her team. The specialized containment unit had maintained perfect conditions throughout the journey, and their passenger remained calm despite the stress of interstellar travel. "How is she doing?" asked Chief Petty Officer Kim Washington, one of the few people aboard who had been briefed on the true nature of their mission. Dr. Vasquez smiled as she monitored the biometric readings. "Heart rate is steady, stress indicators are normal. She seems to understand that something important is happening, but she's not showing any signs of anxiety. If anything, she appears curious about the new environment." The containment unit itself was a marvel of human engineering, designed to perfectly replicate a specific Earth ecosystem down to the molecular level. Temperature, humidity, atmospheric composition, even the bacterial flora. Everything had been precisely calibrated to ensure their passengers' comfort and health during the long journey to the combat platform. Back in the arena, the opening ceremonies had begun. Representatives from neutral species delivered formal speeches about the ancient traditions of single combat and the binding nature of the outcome. The winner's species would gain recognition of their territorial claims, while the loser would be expected to withdraw from all disputed areas. As the ceremonies continued, gambling became increasingly frenzied in the observation areas. The odds against a human victory had actually increased once visual confirmation of the Nethrix became available. Several species that had initially placed token bets on the humans quietly withdrew their wagers. After seeing Bone Render's impressive display of strength and aggression, Admiral Krex observed the proceedings with satisfaction. The humans grow desperate. They delay revealing their champion because they know the psychological impact of seeing the Nethrix will destroy their warriors' confidence. Ambassador Zektar nodded agreement, though privately he found the human delay somewhat puzzling. Most species would have begun posturing immediately upon arrival, displaying their champion and attempting to intimidate their opponents. The human silence suggested either fear or an unusual level of confidence. The truth was that Rodriguez and his team were simply waiting for optimal conditions. The arena's environmental systems had been designed to accommodate a wide range of species, with atmospheric composition and gravity adjustable within certain parameters. The humans had requested Earth-normal conditions for the combat, a seemingly reasonable request that the Vorthak had readily agreed to. What the Vorthak did not understand was the subtle significance of those conditions. Oxygen levels, humidity, temperature, even the specific wavelengths of light provided by the arena's illumination systems, all had been carefully selected, not just for human comfort, but for the comfort of Earth's ecosystem. As the final ceremonial speeches concluded, the announcement echoed through the arena. The champions will now be presented for inspection by the combat officials. Bone Render was released into the arena first, its massive form moving with fluid grace across the specially reinforced flooring. The creature paused in the center of the combat area, raising itself to its full height and releasing a sound that was part roar, part hunting cry. The noise resonated through the arena structure, causing several of the more sensitive species in the observation areas to retreat further from the viewing walls. The Nethrix began a dominance display, demonstrating its speed and agility with a series of movements that showcased its lethal capabilities. It struck at the air with claws that whistled through the atmosphere, each swipe capable of decapitating most known species. Its armor plates shifted and flexed, revealing the incredible musculature beneath, while simultaneously showing the overlapping layers of protection that covered its entire body. Then the human champion was announced, and Commander Rodriguez walked calmly into the arena. The reaction from the observation decks was immediate and confused. This was clearly not what anyone had expected from humanity's greatest warrior. Rodriguez stood in the center of the arena, looking remarkably small and fragile compared to the massive Nethrix. He carried no weapons, wore no armor, and showed no signs of genetic enhancement or cybernetic augmentation. To most observers, he appeared to be nothing more than an ordinary middle-aged human who had somehow been selected for an impossible task. The Nethrix studied him with intelligent eyes, its head tilting as it tried to assess this strange new prey. Bonerender had faced many different species over the years, but none quite like this. The human showed no fear scent, no aggressive posturing, no preparation for combat. It was as if he was simply waiting for something. Then Rodriguez spoke, his voice carrying clearly through the arena's communication systems. "I call for my partner." The arena fell silent as Rodriguez's words echoed through the vast space. Confusion rippled through the observation decks as translators struggled to convey the meaning of partner in various alien languages. Several species had no direct equivalent for the concept, leading to a cascade of mistranslations and bewildered discussions. Ambassador Zektar leaned forward in his observation box, his forearms gripping the railing with enough force to leave dents in the metal. What does the human mean by partner? The rules clearly state single combat between apex creatures. Admiral Krex's compound eyes clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation among his species. Perhaps it is a translation error. Humans are known for their imprecise use of language, but the combat officials had been briefed on this possibility. Chief Arbitrator Nexdal, a member of the ancient and supposedly neutral keeper species, consulted his official documents before making an announcement that sent shockwaves through the assembled delegates. The human challenger has invoked subsection 47 of the ancient combat protocols. Nexdal's voice resonated with the authority of millennia. When a species' apex creature fights as part of a bonded pair, both members of the partnership are permitted in the arena. This rule has not been invoked in over 3,000 standard years. The revelation created chaos in the observation areas. Most species had forgotten that such a rule existed, buried deep in legal texts that predated many current civilizations. The few scholars who remembered it had assumed it applied only to hive mind species or creatures that literally could not survive separation from their mates. Zektar's bioluminescent patterns flared with rage. This is a deception. Humans do not have bonded combat pairs. They are individual creatures who fight alone. But even as he spoke, the arena's main entrance was opening and Dr. Vasquez was carefully leading a second figure into the combat area. The new arrival moved with fluid grace, every step perfectly balanced and economical. Her coat was a rich golden brown with darker markings, and her athletic build spoke of countless hours of training and conditioning. Rodriguez knelt and extended his hand as the newcomer approached. She moved to his side without hesitation, sitting calmly beside him while maintaining perfect alertness to her surroundings. Her dark eyes took in every detail of the arena, from the massive Nethrix across the space to the watching aliens in their observation boxes. "Ladies and gentlemen," Rodriguez announced with obvious pride, "I would like you to meet Staff Sergeant Luna Rodriguez, United Earth Military Working Dog Corps, specializing in search and rescue, explosive detection, and combat operations." The dog was a magnificent specimen of her breed, a German shepherd with the confident bearing of a veteran soldier. Her ears stood erect as she assessed the situation, and her tail wagged once in acknowledgement of the introduction, before she returned to scanning for potential threats. The silence that followed was deafening. Across thousands of worlds, billions of intelligent beings struggled to process what they were seeing. The humans had brought a non-sentient animal as their champion. Not just any animal, but what appeared to be a common domestic pet that many species kept as companions or curiosities. Bonerender tilted its massive head, studying the pair with predatory interest. Its neural pathways, evolved over millions of years to assess threats and identify prey, were sending contradictory signals. The human male was clearly no physical threat, but there was something about the smaller four-legged creature that triggered ancient warning instincts. Ambassador Zektar's voice cracked with incredulous rage.
They mock us.
They send a pet animal to face our apex warrior. But Chief Arbitrator Nextall was consulting his records again, his ancient voice carrying a note of what might have been amusement. The documentation is quite clear. The humans have submitted genetic records, training certifications, and combat service records for both members of their bonded pair. The female has been awarded multiple decorations for valor, has completed over 200 combat missions, and possesses sensory capabilities that exceed those of most sentient species. The records were indeed impressive. Staff Sergeant Luna had been deployed to conflicts across human space, from the asteroid mining disputes in the belt to the hostile environment operations on the frontier worlds. Her service record included successful detection of hidden explosive devices, location of survivors in disaster zones, and direct combat support in situations where human soldiers could not operate effectively. Rodriguez reached over to scratch behind Luna's ears, a gesture so casual and familiar that it spoke of years of partnership. The Vorthak Challenge specifically called for apex creatures. In Earth's biosphere, Canis lupus represents the ultimate result of millions of years of cooperative evolution with humans. We didn't domesticate dogs, we became partners with them. The distinction was lost on most of the observing species, but human scientists had long understood the truth behind their relationship with canines. Dogs had not been conquered or enslaved by humans as many aliens assumed. Instead, both species had evolved together, developing complementary abilities that made them more effective as a team than either could be alone. Luna demonstrated this partnership now, moving into position without any visible command from Rodriguez. Her posture shifted subtly, indicating to her partner that she had identified the Nethrix as a potential threat and was ready to respond accordingly. Rodriguez, reading her body language with the ease of long practice, positioned himself to support whatever action she might take. The Nethrix, meanwhile, was experiencing something it had never encountered before: uncertainty. Its enhanced intelligence was sophisticated enough to recognize that the small four-legged creature was not behaving like typical prey. There was no fear scent, no submission postures, no attempt to flee. Instead, the animal was studying bone render with the same analytical intensity that the Nethrix was directing toward it. Dr. Vasquez, watching from the sidelines, smiled with professional satisfaction. Luna was displaying exactly the behavioral patterns they had hoped for. Months of preparation had gone into ensuring that she would be in peak physical and mental condition for this encounter. Her diet had been optimized, her training regimen intensified, and her partnership with Rodriguez strengthened through countless hours of practice. More importantly, Luna had been selected not just for her physical capabilities, but for her specific psychological profile. She was one of a rare breed of military working dogs that showed no fear response to large predators. Her breeding lines could be traced back to dogs that had faced down wolves, bears, and other apex predators in Earth's wilderness. Confronting dangerous creatures was not just her job. It was encoded in her genetic memory. The arena's atmospheric systems hummed quietly, maintaining the Earth-normal environment that the humans had requested. The oxygen content was slightly higher than optimal for most species. The humidity was calibrated for terrestrial life, and even the electromagnetic spectrum of the lighting had been adjusted to match Sol's output. Every detail had been designed to give the human team whatever advantage was possible within the rules. As the formal inspection period concluded, Bone Render began to pace, its massive claws clicking against the reinforced flooring. The creature was clearly growing impatient, eager to begin the hunt that would demonstrate Vorthak superiority once and for all. Rodriguez stood and brushed imaginary dust from his uniform. "Ready when you are," he called out to the arbitrators, his voice carrying the calm confidence of someone who had faced impossible odds before. Luna rose beside him, her muscles coiled with contained energy. Her nose twitched as she analyzed the scents in the arena, cataloging everything from the alien ozone smell of the Nethrix to the nervous perspiration of the watching delegates. Her tail wagged once, a signal that Rodriguez recognized as her way of saying she was ready for action. The betting pools had gone silent. No one quite knew how to calculate odds for such an unprecedented matchup. The few xenobiologists in the audience were frantically accessing databases, trying to find any information about canine combat capabilities that might inform their analysis. Chief Arbitrator Nextall raised his ceremonial staff, the ancient symbol crackling with energy that spoke of technologies older than most current civilizations. "Let the combat begin!" The moment the arbitrator's staff struck the arena floor, Bone Render exploded into motion. The massive Nethrix crossed half the distance to its opponents in a single bound, its 6 limbs working in perfect coordination to propel nearly half a ton of evolved killing machine through the air. Its claws extended fully, each one gleaming with lethal intent as it prepared to end the combat with a single devastating strike. Rodriguez didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his hands relaxed at his sides, showing no sign of the reflexive panic that would seize most creatures facing an onrushing apex predator. His eyes tracked the Nethrix's movement with professional assessment, calculating trajectory and timing with the precision of a veteran soldier. Luna, however, was already in motion before Bone Render's feet left the ground. The German Shepherd's reaction time was measured in milliseconds. Her nervous system evolved for exactly this type of split-second response. While the massive alien was still gathering itself for its leap, Luna was moving laterally, her powerful hindquarters propelling her in a vector that would intercept the Nethrix at the precise moment of maximum vulnerability. Bone Render's enhanced intelligence recognized the threat a fraction of a second too late. The creature had faced many opponents over its career, but none that could match its speed while simultaneously displaying the tactical sophistication to exploit its moment of airborne helplessness. Its 6 limbs thrashed in mid-flight, trying to adjust its landing to compensate for the unexpected maneuver. Luna struck the Nethrix while it was still 3 feet off the ground, her 70 kilograms of muscle and momentum hitting the creature's lower torso with precisely calculated force. The impact would have been insignificant against the Nethrix's armored hide, but Luna wasn't trying to damage her opponent. Instead, she was using her body as a guided projectile to alter Bone Render's trajectory. The physics were brutally simple. A creature weighing 500 kilograms, traveling at high speed through the air, had enormous momentum but no way to change direction. Luna's perfectly timed collision shifted that momentum by just enough to send Bone Render crashing into the arena wall instead of crushing Rodriguez beneath its claws. The impact shook the entire platform. Bone Render's natural armor protected it from serious injury, but the collision stunned the creature long enough for Luna to complete her own landing and wheel around for another attack. She had already identified the Nethrix's primary weaknesses during those critical seconds of combat. The alien's 6 limbs, so effective for movement and attack, created blind spots in its peripheral vision. Its heavily armored hide was impervious to most forms of damage, but armor always meant weight, and weight meant reduced agility. Most importantly, the creature's predatory instincts were calibrated for hunting prey that would either flee or fight conventionally. Luna was doing neither. Rodriguez finally moved, but not to engage the Nethrix directly. Instead, he began a careful positioning maneuver that demonstrated the true sophistication of human-canine combat partnership. While Luna drew Bone Render's attention with a series of lightning-fast feints and attacks, Rodriguez moved to establish overlapping fields of control that would limit the creature's options. The observing delegates watched in stunned silence as the human team executed maneuvers that no individual creature could have performed. Rodriguez provided strategic oversight and tactical coordination, while Luna served as the primary combatant. Neither could have faced the Nethrix alone, but together they were transforming the single combat into something unprecedented in galactic history. Bone Render roared its frustration as Luna evaded another crushing blow, the sound echoing through the arena with enough force to crack the reinforced viewing windows. The creature's claws left deep gouges in the arena floor where they missed their target, each strike powerful enough to penetrate most known armor systems. But Luna was no longer where she had been when the attack began. Her movement patterns followed principles that the Nethrix's evolutionary programming could not process. She struck and retreated, feinted and redirected, always staying just outside the range of those deadly claws while forcing her opponent to constantly adjust its position. Dr. Vasquez, monitoring Luna's biometric readings from the sidelines, noted with professional satisfaction that the dog's stress indicators remained within optimal ranges. Months of specialized training had prepared her for exactly this type of encounter. She was not fighting in panic or desperation, but executing practiced maneuvers with the precision of a professional soldier. The key to their strategy lay in exploiting the fundamental differences between Earth's ecosystem and those of most other worlds. Bone Render was the apex predator of its environment, but that environment had never produced anything quite like the partnership between humans and dogs. On the Vorthak homeworld, evolution had favored individual strength and armor. Predators were solitary hunters that relied on overwhelming physical superiority to subdue their prey. The concept of cooperative hunting involving multiple species working together was so alien to their evolutionary experience that Bone Render's neural pathways had no framework for processing. Earth's biosphere, however, had produced numerous examples of interspecies cooperation. Humans had learned to work with dogs, dolphins, horses, and dozens of other species in partnerships that benefited both sides. Luna and Rodriguez represented the ultimate refinement of that cooperative evolution. As the combat continued, the pattern became clear to the more observant members of the audience. The human team wasn't trying to kill or incapacitate the Nethrix through direct damage. Instead, they were systematically exhausting it through forced movement and constant adaptation to new threats. Bone Render's massive frame, so intimidating at rest, became a liability when forced into continuous high-energy maneuvers. The creature's armor, designed to deflect attacks from conventional weapons, added weight that increased the metabolic cost of rapid movement. Its powerful muscles, optimized for delivering devastating single strikes, were being forced to sustain extended periods of maximum output. Luna, meanwhile, was operating within her optimal performance envelope. Her cardiovascular system, evolved for endurance hunting across vast distances, could maintain peak output far longer than the Nethrix's burst-oriented physiology. Her smaller size meant lower energy requirements and greater efficiency of movement. Rodriguez continued his careful positioning, never directly engaging but always present as a secondary threat that the Nethrix had to account for. His presence forced Bone Render to divide its attention between two opponents, preventing the creature from focusing entirely on the more immediate threat posed by Luna. The partnership's effectiveness was becoming apparent even to observers who had initially dismissed the human strategy as desperate improvisation. Admiral Krex's compound eyes tracked the movement patterns with growing concern, his analytical mind recognizing the sophisticated tactical framework underlying what appeared to be chaotic action. "They are not fighting randomly," he announced to the other hegemony observers. "There is pattern and purpose to their movements. The animal serves as primary combatant, while the human provides strategic coordination." Ambassador Zektar's bioluminescent patches flared with denial, but even he could see that Bone Render was slowing. The creature's attacks, initially delivered with lightning speed and devastating power, were becoming less precise and more labored. Its breathing had shifted from the controlled rhythm of a confident predator to the deeper, more rapid pattern of an animal under severe metabolic stress. Luna sensed the change immediately. Her own breathing remained steady and controlled as she adjusted her tactics to match her opponent's declining performance. Where she had previously focused on pure evasion, she now began incorporating more aggressive maneuvers designed to accelerate the Nethrix's exhaustion. Rodriguez smiled grimly as he recognized the shift in momentum. The combat was far from over, but the outcome was no longer in doubt. Luna had identified her opponent's critical weakness and was now systematically exploiting it with the patience and precision of a master tactician. The arena fell silent except for the sound of Bone Render's labored breathing and the soft click of Luna's claws against the reinforced flooring. The galaxy was witnessing something unprecedented, an apex predator being systematically outmaneuvered by what most species had assumed was merely a domesticated pet. 20 minutes into the combat, Bone Render's movements had slowed from lightning-fast strikes to heavy, deliberate swipes. The massive Nethrix's natural armor, designed to deflect energy weapons and projectiles, had become a prison of its own making. Each plate now felt like additional weight dragging down the creature's increasingly exhausted frame. Luna, by contrast, showed no signs of fatigue. Her tongue lolled slightly as she panted in the measured rhythm of an athlete pacing herself through a familiar workout. Her dark eyes remained bright and alert, constantly tracking her opponent's position while maintaining perfect awareness of Rodriguez's location and the arena's boundaries. The human canine team had settled into a deadly rhythm. Rodriguez would signal subtle directions through barely perceptible gestures, a slight shift of weight, a turn of his head, a barely visible hand movement. Luna would respond instantaneously, adjusting her position to maintain optimal tactical advantage while keeping Bone Render under constant pressure. For the watching delegates, the display was reshaping their fundamental understanding of combat effectiveness. Traditional galactic warfare emphasized individual superiority. The strongest creature, the most advanced technology, the most devastating weapons. What they were witnessing challenged every assumption about how battles should be fought. Representative Quiln of the Ethereal Collective had been taking detailed notes throughout the encounter. Her species' mathematical minds were naturally drawn to pattern analysis, and she was beginning to understand the elegant complexity of the human strategy. "Observe how the human maintains multiple threat vectors simultaneously," she whispered to her aide. "The canine serves as the primary aggressor, but the human's positioning creates additional angles of attack that the Nethrix must defend against. Neither could achieve this alone, but together they have multiplied their effective combat power exponentially." The revelation was spreading through the observation areas as more species began to recognize the sophistication of cooperative tactics. Several military observers were already transmitting preliminary reports to their home fleets, recognizing that they might need to fundamentally reassess their understanding of human combat doctrine. Ambassador Zektar remained defiant despite the mounting evidence of his champion's deteriorating condition. "Bone Render is merely toying with them," he announced loudly enough for nearby delegates to hear. "Soon it will tire of this game and end the combat with a single strike." But Admiral Krex's assessment was more realistic. His species had evolved from pack hunters, and he recognized the patterns unfolding in the arena. "The Nethrix is being systematically worn down," he reported to his staff. "Its metabolic reserves are approaching critical depletion. If current trends continue, it will soon be unable to maintain effective combat operations." The truth was becoming apparent to anyone with tactical experience. Bone Render had been designed by evolution to deliver overwhelming force in brief encounters. Its hunting strategy relied on identifying prey, stalking within striking distance, and ending the encounter with a single devastating attack. The creature had never faced opponents who could not only survive that initial assault, but force it into an extended engagement. Luna's breeding and training had prepared her for exactly this scenario. Her genetic lineage traced back to working dogs that had protected human settlements from wolves, bears, and other large predators. Generations of selective breeding had enhanced her natural endurance while maintaining the agility and intelligence needed to outmaneuver larger opponents. More importantly, her training had included extensive work with alien combat scenarios. Human military planners had studied recordings of Nethrix combat performance and developed specific countermeasures. Luna had practiced against holographic opponents that moved with the same speed and power as Bone Render, learning to exploit the blind spots and vulnerabilities that the creature's evolutionary advantages had created. Rodriguez called out commands now, his voice carrying clearly through the arena as the partnership shifted into a new phase of their strategy. "Luna, Pattern 7. Maintain distance and probe the left flank weakness we identified." The commands were meaningless to most observers, but they represented hundreds of hours of training and preparation. Luna immediately adjusted her movement pattern, focusing her attacks on a specific area where Bone Render's armor plates created a gap in coverage during certain defensive maneuvers. The Nethrix, despite its intelligence, was operating on instinctive responses that millions of years of evolution had hardwired into its nervous system. When threatened from one direction, it automatically turned to present its most heavily armored side to the attacker. Luna had learned to exploit this predictable response, using feints and false attacks to manipulate Bone Render's positioning. Dr. Vasquez continued monitoring Luna's vital signs, noting with satisfaction that the dog's performance remained within optimal parameters. Heart rate was elevated but stable, respiratory function was efficient, and stress hormone levels indicated controlled excitement rather than panic or exhaustion. The specialized diet and conditioning program they had developed for this mission was proving its worth. Luna's muscle tissue had been optimized for sustained high-intensity activity. Her cardiovascular system had been enhanced through altitude training and controlled exercise protocols, and her reflexes had been sharpened through intensive simulation work. As the combat entered its third hour, the pace had slowed dramatically. Bone Render now moved with visible effort, its massive head hanging lower than before and its breathing producing visible clouds in the arena's controlled atmosphere. The creature's attacks, while still potentially lethal, came with increasing intervals between them, as it struggled to maintain the energy needed for sustained combat. Luna sensed the approaching conclusion and began to alter her tactics accordingly. Where she had previously focused on pure evasion and exhaustion, she now started testing her opponent's defenses more aggressively. Her attacks were still carefully calculated to avoid the Nethrix's lethal capabilities, but they were designed to accelerate the creature's decline rather than simply maintaining the status quo. Rodriguez's role became more prominent as his partner moved into the final phase of their strategy. His positioning shifts became more dramatic, forcing Bone Render to divide its attention between multiple threats while its cognitive functions were already impaired by exhaustion and oxygen debt. The arena had fallen, completely silent except for the sounds of combat. Even the most vocal Vorthak supporters had stopped their encouragement, as it became clear that their apex creature was fighting for survival rather than certain victory. The betting pools had closed entirely, with bookmakers unable to calculate odds for a situation that had no historical precedent. Chief Arbitrator Nextall observed the proceedings with the detached interest of someone who had witnessed the rise and fall of dozens of civilizations. His ancient species had seen many examples of hubris and overconfidence, but few as dramatic as the unfolding demonstration of Vorthak miscalculation. The arbitrator's role was to ensure fair combat, according to the ancient protocols, but he was also responsible for ending the encounter if one participant became unable to continue. Bone Render was approaching that threshold, its massive frame swaying slightly as it struggled to remain upright. Luna moved in for what Rodriguez recognized as the final sequence. Her approach was patient and methodical, waiting for the exact moment when Bone Render's exhaustion would create an opening for a decisive maneuver. She had identified the creature's collapse point through careful observation, and was now positioning herself to exploit it. The Nethrix made one final attempt at aggression, gathering its remaining strength for a last desperate attack. Its claws extended to full length as it prepared to charge, muscles tensing for what it hoped would be a killing blow. But Luna was already moving, her trajectory calculated to intersect with Bone Render at the precise moment when the creature would be most vulnerable. The partnership between human and dog was about to deliver a conclusion that would forever change the galaxy's understanding of what constituted an apex predator. Bone Render's final charge began with the same explosive power that had characterized its earlier attacks, but the execution was flawed by exhaustion and desperation. The massive Nethrix's timing was off by crucial milliseconds. Its targeting was imprecise, and its recovery options were limited by the metabolic debt that 3 hours of sustained combat had imposed on its system. Luna read the attack pattern instantly, her enhanced reflexes and tactical training allowing her to process information that was still developing in her opponent's nervous system. She moved not to where Bone Render was, but to where the creature would be when its momentum carried it past the point of no return. The sequence that followed lasted less than 5 seconds, but would be analyzed by military strategists across the galaxy for generations to come. As Bone Render committed to its final assault, Luna executed a maneuver that combined the grace of a natural predator with the precision of advanced tactical training. She darted between the creature's rear limbs, using her smaller size to access areas where the Nethrix's own anatomy prevented effective defense. Her target was not the heavily armored exterior that had deflected every previous attack, but a vulnerable nerve cluster located behind the creature's primary joint articulations. Human xenobiologists had identified this weakness months earlier through careful study of Vorthak anatomy, recognizing that even the most perfect biological design had necessary vulnerabilities. Luna's strike was delivered with surgical precision. Her teeth, evolved for gripping and holding rather than cutting, applied pressure to exactly the right location for exactly the right duration. She was not trying to cause permanent damage, but to trigger a temporary neurological disruption that would end the combat without needless cruelty. Bone Render's massive frame seized as its nervous system received conflicting signals from the targeted nerve cluster. The creature's legs buckled, sending nearly half a ton of alien predator crashing to the arena floor with an impact that shook the entire platform. The Nethrix was not unconscious. but it was effectively paralyzed as its brain struggled to process the neurological confusion Luna's precise strike had created. The creature's eyes remained alert and intelligent, but its body had temporarily lost the coordination needed for continued combat. Rodriguez moved forward calmly, positioning himself where Bonerender could see him clearly. "It's over," he said quietly, his voice carrying through the arena's enhanced acoustic systems. "Your champion fought well, but the combat is concluded." Luna sat beside her partner, her tail wagging once in satisfaction at a job well done. Her breathing was elevated but controlled, and she showed no signs of the exhaustion that had overwhelmed her much larger opponent. To her, this had been an interesting training exercise rather than a life-or-death struggle. The silence in the observation areas was absolute. Thousands of the galaxy's most sophisticated beings struggled to process what they had witnessed. The impossible had occurred. A species apex creature had been defeated not by superior strength or advanced technology, but by cooperation, endurance, and tactical sophistication. Chief Arbitrator Nextall stepped forward, his ancient staff crackling with ceremonial energy. "Combat is concluded. Victory is awarded to the human partnership." The formal announcement triggered a cascade of reactions throughout the arena. Several delegates immediately began urgent communications with their home governments, reporting developments that would reshape diplomatic and military planning across known space. Others sat in stunned silence, their fundamental assumptions about combat effectiveness shattered by what they had observed. Ambassador Zektar's bioluminescent patterns had shifted to colors that indicated shock and disbelief. His forearms trembled as he struggled to accept the reality of his species' defeat. "This is impossible," he whispered, though his words were picked up by the arena's sensitive recording equipment. No creature can defeat a Nethrix in single combat. But Admiral Krex was already adapting to the new reality. His species' military doctrine emphasized learning from defeat, and he recognized that the humans had demonstrated capabilities that demanded immediate study and response. "Begin full analysis of all combat recordings," he ordered his staff. "Priority classification. We need to understand every aspect of their tactical approach." Dr. Vasquez entered the arena to conduct a post-combat medical evaluation of Luna, her portable equipment scanning for any signs of injury or stress. The readings confirmed what she had expected. The dog was tired but unharmed, showing the physiological profile of an athlete who had completed a challenging but manageable workout. Rodriguez knelt beside Luna, offering the praise and affection that represented her true reward for the successful mission. "Good girl," he said simply, scratching behind her ears in the gesture that had become their traditional celebration of mission completion. "Outstanding work." The relationship between human and dog, so casual and affectionate in the aftermath of combat, provided a stark contrast to the formal, hierarchical structures that characterized most galactic civilizations. The genuine partnership between species, based on mutual respect and complementary abilities, was almost as revolutionary as their tactical victory. Representative Quiln was among the first to approach the human team, her gossamer form shimmering with what her species used to indicate profound respect. "I would like to study your partnership methods," she announced. "My people may have much to learn from your cooperative approach to problem solving." The request represented a significant shift in galactic politics. The ethereal collective had historically considered themselves superior to most other species in terms of intellectual development. Their willingness to seek knowledge from the humans indicated a fundamental reevaluation of humanity's position in the galactic hierarchy. Other species representatives began approaching with similar requests. Military observers wanted to understand human tactical doctrine. Xenobiologists sought information about the human-canine partnership. Diplomats recognized that their previous assessments of human capabilities had been dangerously incomplete. But the most significant reaction came from the Vorthek delegation itself. Ambassador Zektar, his pride wounded but his intelligence intact, approached Rodriguez with the formal bearing of a defeated but honorable opponent. "I acknowledge the legitimacy of your victory," Zektar announced, his voice carrying the weight of official policy. "The Vorthak Empire will honor the terms of combat and withdraw our territorial claims from the disputed regions." The concession represented more than just a resolution to the immediate conflict. It signaled a fundamental shift in how the galaxy's established powers viewed humanity and their expansion into previously unclaimed space. Rodriguez accepted the concession with quiet dignity, showing neither triumph nor false modesty. "The combat was fairly fought," he replied. "Your champion showed courage and strength. We hope this resolution will lead to better understanding between our species." Luna, unaware of the diplomatic significance of the moment, was more interested in the water bowl that Dr. Vasquez had provided. Her tail wagged contentedly as she hydrated after her exertions, occasionally looking up to receive additional praise from Rodriguez and the gathering crowd of admirers. The simple image of a tired dog drinking water while galactic powers rearranged their strategic calculations provided a perfect illustration of how profoundly the encounter had changed everything. Humanity's apex creature was not a monster of destruction, but a partner in cooperation. As the arena began to empty and representatives departed to report to their governments, the implications of the day's events were only beginning to unfold. The galaxy had learned that humans possessed capabilities far beyond what anyone had suspected, and that lesson would reshape interstellar relations for generations to come. 6 months after the combat that shocked the galaxy, the ripple effects continued to reshape interstellar civilization in ways that no one had anticipated. The simple image of a German shepherd defeating a legendary apex predator had become the most widely distributed recording in galactic history, viewed billions of times across thousands of worlds. Commander Rodriguez sat in his office aboard the UES Harmony, humanity's newest diplomatic vessel, reviewing reports from across human space. Luna lay on her favorite rug beside his desk, occasionally lifting her head when interesting scents drifted through the ship's environmental systems. Her collar now bore additional decorations recognizing her status as the first non-human recipient of the Galactic Medal of Valor. The transformation in humanity's galactic standing had been dramatic and swift. Species that had previously regarded humans as primitive newcomers were now requesting formal diplomatic exchanges and military cooperation agreements. The revelation that humans possessed sophisticated combat doctrines based on interspecies cooperation had fundamentally altered strategic calculations throughout known space. Admiral Chen's latest report made the scope of change clear. 17 different species have formally requested access to human tactical training programs. The Ethereal Collective wants to establish a joint research facility to study cooperative combat methods. Even the Hegemony War Fleet has approached us about military exchange programs. The irony was not lost on Rodriguez. Humanity's greatest diplomatic victory had been achieved not through displays of technological superiority or military might, but by demonstrating the power of partnership and mutual respect between species. The very qualities that other civilizations had dismissed as primitive sentiment had proven to be humanity's greatest strategic advantage. Dr. Vasquez entered the office carrying her daily medical report on Luna's condition. The dog had become something of a celebrity throughout human space, with requests for public appearances and documentary interviews arriving daily. "She's in perfect health," Vasquez reported, "though I think she's getting tired of all the attention. Yesterday she actually hid when a news crew came aboard." Rodriguez chuckled, reaching down to pet Luna's head. "She never wanted to be famous. All she ever wanted was to do her job well and get some praise afterward." The simplicity of Luna's motivations contrasted sharply with the complex political maneuvering that her victory had triggered. Galactic civilization was struggling to understand a species that achieved excellence through cooperation rather than domination, partnership rather than conquest. Lieutenant Park appeared in the doorway with the day's communication logs. "Sir, we've received formal invitations to establish human embassies on 43 different worlds. The Galactic Council has also requested that you and Luna attend their next full assembly as honored guests." The invitation represented unprecedented recognition for a species that had been on the verge of forced withdrawal from disputed territories just months earlier. The Council had never before invited non-members to address their full assembly, and the inclusion of Luna in the invitation acknowledged her role as something more than a simple military asset. "There's also this," Park added, handing over a personal message tablet. "From Ambassador Zektar of the Vorthak Empire." Rodriguez accepted the tablet with curiosity. His relationship with the Vorthak ambassador had evolved from hostile opposition to grudging respect during the months following their combat encounter. Zektar had proven to be an honorable opponent who accepted defeat with dignity and had worked to ensure smooth implementation of the territorial agreements. The message was characteristically direct. Commander Rodriguez, the Vorthak High Command has completed their analysis of our combat encounter. We wish to formally request military cooperation agreements between our species. Your tactical innovations have applications that extend far beyond simple territorial disputes. We believe mutual cooperation would benefit both civilizations. Also, please convey our respects to Staff Sergeant Luna. Our warriors speak of her with great admiration. The transformation in Vorthak attitudes represented perhaps the most significant diplomatic achievement in recent galactic history. A species built around concepts of individual superiority and martial dominance was actively seeking to learn cooperation strategies from humans. Their military philosophers were studying recordings of the combat, trying to understand how partnership could multiply combat effectiveness beyond the sum of individual capabilities. Rodriguez's communication console chimed with an incoming priority message from Earth. Admiral Sarah. Chen's image appeared on the screen, her expression mixing pride with concern. Marcus, I hope you're ready for this, but the situation has evolved beyond our original expectations. The President has asked me to offer you command of the new Interspecies Cooperation Initiative. We're establishing a formal program to teach partnership tactics to other civilizations, and your success with Luna makes you the obvious choice to lead it. The offer represented a complete reversal of humanity's position in galactic affairs. 6 months earlier, they had been fighting to maintain their right to expand into unclaimed space. Now they were being asked to serve as teachers and advisors to civilizations that had existed for millennia before humans achieved spaceflight. The scope would be enormous, Chen continued. We're talking about establishing training facilities on dozens of worlds, working with hundreds of different species, and developing tactical doctrines that could reshape how conflicts are resolved throughout the galaxy. It's exactly the kind of challenge that you and Luna were born for. Rodriguez looked down at Luna, who was watching him with the intelligent attention that had made their partnership so effective. Her tail wagged slightly as if she understood that they were being offered another important mission. What do you think, girl? Ready to teach the galaxy how to work together? Luna's response was a single bark of confirmation, followed by her characteristic head tilt that indicated she was ready for whatever came next. The decision was easier than Rodriguez had expected. Their victory in the arena had demonstrated the power of human-canine partnership to a single audience. The Interspecies Cooperation Initiative would allow them to share those lessons with the entire galaxy, potentially preventing conflicts through the spread of cooperative tactical doctrines. Admiral Chen, we accept the assignment. When do we start? Chen's smile was visible even across the light years separating them. Immediately. Your first class of students is already waiting at the new facility on Kepler Station, representatives from 12 different species, including several former enemies who specifically requested training from the team that defeated Bone Render. As the communication ended, Rodriguez began reviewing the preliminary files on their prospective students. The diversity was remarkable. Insectoid hive minds seeking to understand individual initiative, crystalline beings trying to develop emotional bonds with biological partners, and energy-based entities attempting to work with matter-based creatures. Luna seemed to sense the importance of their new mission. She moved to the window that looked out at the stars, her posture alert and ready. Somewhere among those distant lights were civilizations that had spent millennia believing that strength came from individual superiority. Soon they would learn the human truth, that the greatest power came not from standing alone but from choosing to stand together. The galaxy would never be the same. An apex predator had been defeated not by a stronger predator, but by the revolutionary concept that cooperation could triumph over competition. The lesson was spreading from world to world, carried by the story of a human soldier and his dog, who had changed everything simply by being the best team they could be. In the end, humanity's greatest export to the galaxy was not technology or military might, but the simple idea that different species could work together as partners, rather than merely coexisting as competitors. It was a lesson that would echo through the stars for generations to come, carried forward by every partnership that chose cooperation over conquest. Luna wagged her tail once more and settled down for a nap, content in the knowledge that her next mission would be to teach others what she had always known, that the pack was always stronger than the individual. and that loyalty freely given was the most powerful force in the universe.